Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Pop Sub Club. I'm Nick, and I am here with the director of Primitive War himself, the super awesome dinosaur movie that you may or may not have seen, though I hope you've seen. Luke Sparke. Luke, how are you doing today?
Hello everyone. How you going?
So, thanks for coming on. And I guess first things first, I got to say, what's it like having your film, a movie set during the Vietnam War, but has dinosaurs and is based on a novel as well? What's it like seeing this idea come from like the book to your mind to script to reality and people responding so passionately and positively to it?
Yeah, I mean, two things. One, it's surreal to be able to see something right through from the conception. Reading the book, seeing the through line as I read it and knew which parts I would adapt and which parts I'd leave. Seeing that go from there in my head to releasing in cinemas across America, and as you pointed out, the reaction being so good. Like it's like it's potentially once in a lifetime. I never think about the future. I think about right now. So for me, it's always like this could be the only film that I do like this. You just never know. So it's humbling, and it's definitely something that I don't take for granted. So I appreciate everyone out there who's seen it or commented, and that's awesome. The second part of that is just a reminder of all the hard work, because it takes a lot of work to get something like this done. Like a lot of work. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life to get this movie out there and done in the way that I wanted. And being completely independent with no backers, studio or government, only private backers. So to be able to see it right now at the end is just sort of take a breath and just be like, man, that was hard, very
Yeah,
very hard.
I can imagine. I think the one thing that kind of sticks out in my mind too, especially after having seen the movie, is the word scope. I mean, like there's a lot of independent films, a lot of independent dinosaur films that have come out over the decades, especially since Jurassic Park. And scope has always been something that's hard to accomplish due to budget and, location and things of that nature. But you've managed to give a lot of scope to the film and show the importance that, like, yeah, you may not have the backing of a major studio, but that doesn't mean you can't give the audience something to kind of look at. And I say that specifically for the scene when they're walking and it's kind of like in the hilly plains and there's that like overarching shot where there's like dinosaurs walking and you can see the mountains and the jungle. I mean, that was honestly a moment where I was sitting there, I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, you don't see something like that unless it's like in Jurassic Park. So I think that's awesome that you're able to bring such scope to a movie that by all rights should be smaller.
Yeah, I mean, that's the word I kept using on set. So you've nailed it. Scope is a word I used all the time. Every time we were doing something, I'm like, could this be bigger? Like, how do we, let's expand our minds. Let's not just get the coverage, get the day. Let's try to make sure that it's like, the next step up. So that's two things you're fighting when you're making a movie and also making an independent movie. It's always getting the day, getting the call sheet, making sure you're not falling behind, but also not losing. And that's what a lot of people do. They go, well, at least we got it, right? At least it's there on celluloid or digital or whatever. I always, like take a step back and say to the crew, can this be done better? Let's find a different way to make a bit more scope about this. So that's just my mind from watching the James Camerons and the Spielbergs and the George Lucas movies all my life. So I always have that in the back of my mind.
Yeah, definitely. It worked. I mean, I can see from watching the movie those elements from those filmmakers where you wanted to like put your stamp on that as well and have that kind of that awe factor moment that those movies have also offered to so many people. I'm kind of always one of those people that wants to like get right into the topic, but I also know that it's important to kind of build the foundation. So that being said, Primitive War is based on a book. It's based on a book series, and I'm curious, how did this project kind of like how did it come into your bubble, I guess you could say, in
Hmm.
terms of like where like did you read the book and were a fan, or maybe you just kind of were curious and you were like, oh, this is a good fun movie.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was looking for another project to do, and I always
Mhm.
like to have projects go. I've got my own ideas and my own scripts and things I always are percolating on.
Mhm.
But this one, literally by chance, was just me scrolling through social media one day, and I came across the cover art of a comic that they were making based on the book, and it was a Utah raptor with feathers jumping out of bushes at a squad of soldiers, and I was just immediately was like, "What's this?" never heard this before.
Mhm.
It scratches my itch from military, from dinosaurs, and just, you know, so to me, and a few reviewers have mentioned this, it sort of harkens back to being a kid myself, playing with a toy box full of soldiers and dinosaurs, and that's kind of what, you know what I mean? That's kind of my jam, even though I'm a grown adult. So yeah, it just immediately spoke to me, and then I ordered the book. I read it. I reached out to the author, and kind of went from there. But literally just by chance, just scrolling through the internet. I would love to have a bigger story. I'd love to be like, come up with a different sort of story. It was this amazing thing, but it was just literally by chance. Maybe one day it'll be a good story, being like, just by chance, Luke Sparke was scrolling through and saw this book series, and now it's like, you know, all these movies. So who knows?
I think that's a cool story, to be honest. I mean, I think it shows the importance, you know, social media can be such a critical topic, but in terms of this, in terms of, you know, breeding ideas, you see a velociraptor jump at a soldier. I mean, a big fan of military history and dinosaurs as well. I mean, I'd be the same way. Like, what the heck am I looking at? That's so cool. So I think that's a cool story.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to look at it and go, that's cool. It's another thing to be able to have the tenacity to go, I'm gonna take it on, and I'm gonna do it, you know, as you said, with as big a scope and as punchy as I can, and try to have it where someone, if I like it, someone else probably will like it. That's always my mantra. Like, I'm a fanboy. You know what I mean? I used to go to these Comic Cons, I used to go to different places, and now I'm appearing at Comic Cons and talking to the next generation about doing it. So it's kind of a weird way how that works.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, yeah, to take it on was a big task. I did shop it around Hollywood and tried to get studio backing. I did try to do it that way because I thought it was an easy elevator pitch. You know what I mean? Dinosaurs in Vietnam, like, it's, you know what I mean? It's like, again, every childhood, and it's been proven. I mean, now in hindsight, right? People go, "Oh, it's been proven. You've been proven."
Yeah.
Like, but even up until the release of this movie, there were still people who were like, "No, I don't know." No one really knew, and I feel like there are a lot of Hollywood right now, and is in this changing scope, and no one wants to make the wrong call for their own hides. You know what I mean? So everyone was like, we see it, we see the potential, but I don't want to be the one that says yes and then it doesn't work and then I get fired. And no one wanted to take it on, so I just had to take it on myself. And now everyone's coming back to me. Literally, companies that passed on it 3 times came back to me the week of release and were like, "We'll buy it now. Let's work on it. Let's work together." And I'm like, "This is hilarious." So, you know, yeah, it was a big swing.
Yeah, definitely was. But I think that your story, and even if you go back to movies like more recently too, like say Sinners, where people wouldn't look at these things and see the potential. And I think that there's always been that issue in like the larger scope of filmmaking in Hollywood, where ultimately we're here to be entertained, we're here to have a good time, and topics like that are a good time. And it must feel very validating to have done it yourself, done the legwork, and now everyone's like, "Oh, we were just actually, can we check it out again?"
Yeah. Another word you bang on. First you said scope, and then he said validating. I was actually saying to my crew here, I want to get it printed on a shirt, validated, because the amount of hindsight that's come back around with this movie has kind of been hilarious.
I'm definitely gonna have to put somewhere validated in the title of this episode.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, you know, you said you were a fanboy, and I'm a fanboy as well. I sit here in my X-Men shirt with all my comic book stuff in the background. But, you know, I feel like there's a lot of shared interest that we probably have, but I'm curious, what are some of the things, either leading to Primitive War or just you as an individual, that you have always kind of connected with?
I also love that it's like the good X-Men as well, like the cartoon.
Oh, absolutely, always.
I grew up on that. Even now I can even hear it in my head, the theme songs. But look, you know, I grew up, like I mentioned before, in the Camerons, the Spielbergs, the Lucases throughout the 80s. And also, I'm a huge fan of Michael Bay. Some people were like, "Oh my God, that's sacrilege," but like, I love him, and I love his movies. I can't help it. So you probably see some of that in Primitive War as well. The sort of, you know, that sort of extra little thing that he does. But I always tell people I'd love to be known as like the Michael Bay with like Spielberg sensibilities. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If you kind of get my drift of, you know, the childlike notion of Spielberg and how amazing he is as a creator all through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even today. So yeah, I mean, growing up, it was all, you know, Star Wars is my number one love. So I'm a huge fan of Star Wars. So I'd always travel around and go to the Comic Cons and go to the the ones over here, and you know, meet the actors, and now I get to work with the actors. So like I've worked with Temuera Morrison twice, who plays Boba Fett
Yeah.
now. So he's a friend of mine, and like I'm now good friends with Sam Wither from the animation side of Star Wars. So you know what I mean? Like again, just being a fanboy. I was saying to someone yesterday, I still fanboy out of things. Like I was at Comic-Con doing this movie, which was an amazing experience in its own right. But just to be backstage and walking past, you know, all these big people who I love, you know, Alan Tudyk and Seth Green and all these different people. I'm like, oh my God, you're Seth Green. And people are like, you don't act like that, Luke. You're here now. And I'm like, no. I'm cool. I'm a fanboy. You know what I mean? Like, so it just gets me excited myself to be in it. So, you know, growing up and then to the Aliens and the Predators, obviously throughout the 80s. Independence Day is a big, huge fan of that movie in the 90s. And X-Men and all the Marvel stuff. You know, just like anyone else, Marvel came into their own much later on with Iron Man, but I was, you know, I obviously had watched X-Men. I loved that TV show. I also loved the animated Spider-Man from around the same time period. It's probably like nearly probably one of my favorite Spider-Man runs. So yeah, so always on that. And throughout the 80s and 90s, you know, I mean, being a fanboy or a nerd wasn't the cool thing it is today. So I kind of wish I kind of missed the moment, because growing up in like the south coast of New South Wales, down past Sydney in Australia here, where the 90s didn't, you know, the 80s didn't happen until the 90s because we're so far behind down here. You know, growing up down there, you know, it wasn't cool to like all this stuff. So I was kind of like a, you know, a bit of a loner and an outcast in my own little group, I guess, like the Breakfast Club or the Goonies. That's how we always saw ourselves, you know, and with aspirations to do something big with our lives. So, yeah, growing up, it's been movies have been such a big part of my life because of that whole loner and introverted, and actually being a director has sort of taught me to come out of my shell a lot and helped me in that respect too. So it's kind of like a full circle moment.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I mean, I can understand that entirely. I grew up, you know, I had my friends as well, very to myself. You know, I enjoyed the same things, almost verbatim, the same things you enjoyed. I love Spielberg's my favorite director. Jaws my favorite movie. Jurassic Park's one of the earliest movies I saw. I love Independence Day. Pretty much everything you mentioned, I completely agree. And I got to say too, I spoke to Seth Green for my job, and he is such a nice dude. Like you couldn't even like register that's Seth Green. He's so down to earth and also such a huge nerd. It's such a treat. So was Jurassic Park something that like in your life was also a big thing? Like, did you kind of, I've been a dinosaur fan since I was 5. So I'm curious if that was the same for you or not.
Yeah, it's a good thing about dinosaurs, and I guess that's why the franchises of the JP franchises and potentially now Primitive War still work with people, because I think once you get that dinosaur bug, especially with, you know, males and also the female audience as well, but like once you kind of get it, it doesn't really go away. You know what I mean? Like it's always there in the back of your mind, and you see something like, oh, it's cool. I remember when I liked dinosaurs when I was a kid. So it's always that nostalgia, potentially not for one film, but just for them themselves. So the first film I ever remember seeing in cinemas, I was 4 years old, and I remember seeing The Land Before Time, and potentially that's what got me into the dinosaurs. So when I was in kindergarten, which was not long after that, maybe 2 years after that movie, when I was in kindergarten, there's a famous story in my family where I took all these dinosaurs for show and tell, and I did such a good job in kindergarten that the teacher took me around to every class in the school and made me do the same show and tell to every class, because I knew my dinosaurs very, very well. So yeah, and then obviously from there led into watching Jurassic Park a couple of years later. I think I was 8 or 9, so really impressionable age, and it really probably was the movie that, as much as I loved movies before that, and I was even a kid that would go out and hire VHS copies of BTS of, you know, The Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, of how they made them. I think there was one called SFX and another one for the Jedi one. I was always interested in the making of stuff even as a kid, but Jurassic Park really is the one that pushed me into like wanting to be like a filmmaker at that age group. So yeah, I mean, obviously huge, you know, part of my growing up and nostalgia. And I have a really fond spot for The Lost World as well, the one that came out after Jurassic Park. I was on set of Primitive War. Probably more references of that movie in Primitive War than there is of the original JP. Even now, lighting choices for the nighttime stuff, I was always referencing that movie over anything else. So
yeah, don't go into the long grass.
Yeah, and then people mention, it's funny because again, I've been such a fan of different franchises over the years. So like Star Wars, I was on the forums back on like the force.net and a few other Star Wars fan groups since 98, and I'm still there now. So I'd always be in a conversation of movies, and then now I'm making movies and I get to go and see what people are saying about my movie. So it's kind of interesting to read all the comments. And people tell me they're like, don't read the comments, you'll never be happy. But I do. So yeah, lots of comments when the trailer came out about long grass and all the JP references. So I was like, that's funny, that's cool, people get it.
I love that you have a soft spot for The Lost World. I feel like I'm in a minority where that's actually my favorite Jurassic movie of them all. I love the idea of no fences and you're in their element. I think that's I love that movie so much. So I love that you referenced that one in particular. Again, I feel very validated on that end. I'm like, well, director.
So some people don't, but I also love the San Diego ending of that movie with the Rex.
I do too. It's fun
because like, if you have a world where dinosaurs exist in the world, why wouldn't you not use that? I mean, like, I'll say that very carefully. You know what I mean? Like, why would you not use a world where dinosaurs can walk through houses? But anyway, that's just me.
I will add to that before moving on from it, because the fan base does get very ratted. I will say that it makes sense narratively that evolution would lead to dinosaurs literally being in people's backyard in that story. So I agree. T-Rex in San Diego, why not too? Why not? But you also got to work with Sam Neill during your time as a filmmaker, which kind of brings it all like full circle with Jurassic Park. What was that experience like?
Like the 6 degrees of Jurassic Primitive War. You know what I mean? It all ties together. I've also I worked on the. Before I became a director, I was doing costumes and props behind the scenes, which taught me a lot before becoming a director. So I worked on the HBO show The Pacific about World War II, and one of the lead actors of that show was Joe Mazzello, who plays Tim in the original Jurassic Park. So
yes,
I've worked with him as well. So yeah, working with him, and then Sam Neill I worked with on a film a couple of years back I made called Bring Him to Me. It's a crime movie which is on VOD now. And yeah, I mean, I cast Sam. He wanted to be a bad guy in that movie. He loves playing different roles. And just to work with him, just a true gentleman. And again, another fanboy list to sort of tick off. I usually bring the actors into my room, have a meeting with them, and talk about the characters. And I think that entire time we were just talking about Spielberg, Jurassic. And I was just sitting there just like a little kid is going, tell me more. But yeah, just amazing person, an amazing actor, and really, really respectful to everyone on set.
That's awesome. If there's ever, and hopefully there is, a Primitive War sequel to continue this storyline, I hope there's a role for Sam Neill. I'm a huge fan of him as an actor, so that would be another.
Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to cast him in a Primitive movie. I just don't know if it's a possibility contractually with Universal. I'm not. I don't want to get into it, but I'm not sure.
True. That contracts are always either the best or the worst thing in the world, I swear. Now, before diving, headfirst into Primitive War, there's one more question I wanted to ask, because you mentioned your love of Star Wars. You mentioned working with Tamara Morrison and Sam Witwer. If you had the chance to take the reins of anything in Star Wars, is there a story, an era, maybe some characters you want to maybe explore by chance?
I'll answer that in two parts. One, because I know Tim, I did actually pitch him a Boba Fett season 2. And he liked it a lot and passed it on through his people to Lucasfilm. Oh wow! I don't know if anything will come to that, so I don't mind mentioning it, because who knows that whole system.
Fair.
If someone came to me and said, hypothetically, do what you want, Knights of the Old Republic.
Yes. Okay, I like that.
Either that or the Legacy comics that takes place hundreds of years after the original canon, which has now been decanonized for some reason. So yeah, there's a group of comics which is set way after, and like the ghost of Luke Skywalker and his offspring, and he's addicted to drugs or death sticks, and the Sith are back, and there's Imperial Knights, and there's this whole awesome story there that could be really, really tapped into. Either of those two.
I like that. I like how you're
definitely Knights of the Old Republic is definitely one of the best pieces of Star Wars content that's probably been made. Like that game and that era.
Oh yeah, I still think even with the Old Republic, I love watching those cutscenes. They're so kinetic, and the lore is just so vibrant in every cutscene for every DLC. I love that. That Old Republic is an era I I'm a huge fan of like Revan and Nihilus and all of that stuff. So I mean, I love how you picked either really early or really later, and it never messes with the stuff that everyone gets so invested in. So it gives you free reign.
Yeah, well, it's kind of run its course, I think. In that part of Star Wars, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm named after Luke Skywalker. I got the same initials.
Sure.
And growing up, that was obviously awesome. But yeah, I mean, that's been sort of that well's been tapped, I think, the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's we're in there. It's never that it's not entertaining. It's just we're not going in directions that would be fun to explore for sure.
I will say, if John thank God for John Favreau and Dave Filoni, because that whatever you think about the Mandalorian, that ending of season 2, when Luke arrives in that show, as much as it could be a ex machina and all that kind of thing that people have talked about verbatim on the internet, but for me and I think a lot of people, which was reactions online, to see him walk in, and it was really like no one knew that was coming. There was no spoilers dropped, and it was really like it was like, oh my god, like that's Luke Skywalker. Yeah. My wife has me on the couch crying as well. I was just like, I was one of those fanboys. I was just like, couldn't believe it. I was just like, oh my god, we're seeing the green lightsaber, we're seeing Luke in his prime. This is what we wanted. So, you know what I mean? Thank God for that episode.
It was awesome, and I love too the going back to George Lucas's comment about poetry. I love how it parallels Darth Vader's hallway sequence in Rogue One as well. I just think that those are the things that make Star Wars special.
Yeah. And then I've talked to Tim a lot about Boba Fett season 1 and how Luke came into that and all that stuff. So that's a conversation for another time.
That would pencil in a Star Wars chat at some point, which I would love to. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so that'd be cool. But back to Primitive War, because that is why we're here. Something that I like about it is the taking of the Vietnam War. I'm a huge fan of military history. I was kind of raised on it because of my dad. So like you saying he worked on the Pacific, I got chills because I love the Pacific. It's one of the best World War II miniseries out there. And there's the thing I love about when telling a good war story is the importance of accuracy. And ironically, you can say the same thing about the dinosaurs as well. So to that effect, how did the process of making sure everything was as accurate as it could be? It's something I've always been curious about in film. What were the steps you had to take to make sure everything was as it should have been for the time that it was taking place?
It's a very loaded question, so I'll dive into it. So part of the reason why I knew I could sort of pull this off, which I thought I could pull this off, is because of my background doing all those military films. And our family business out here in Australia is actually military costumes and props for entertainment purposes, films. So I've always grown up around either live events or films or military things. So I've always grown up in that world. So we actually own all the costumes you see in the film. It's all the tents, all the paraphernalia and that. Plus we also know where to go to get trucks and tanks and helicopters and everything else. So it's kind of like what we do. So in the Pacific, they brought us on with all that gear in Australia and also brought in a bunch of stuff from America. And we were like on set making sure that military equipment was correct and right for that whole time. So that's my journey of how I got into the film industry. So I knew we had the fallback of like, well, at least everything will look great. Everything the production values will look right because it's all ours. And I was also the production designer on this film. I think I wore like 9 different hats. If people watch your credits, you'll see my name like a lot. And that's only because, again, coming from the background I've been in, and the Pacific, just to touch on that quickly, we arrived like day 1 up in the tropics in Queensland, and we were like one of the last to actually leave on the thing. So I was there for like 11 months and 4 days or something. Oh, wow. And I was there there every day. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. It was super hard, but just if I always tell people always ask, how do we get into the film industry? How do we do what you do? And I always say, just get on a film set, even if you're like the coffee runner or the shoe guy in costume or someone anywhere, just or a runner of cars, because if you want to learn, it's literally the best film school, just being on a film set. And I was so lucky that I was getting paid to work on HBO when I would have paid to work on HBO, because it's alone itself, just the machine of these sets and the cast and the actors and everything else. And just to be able to walk around and go, hey, to the DP team or to the producing team and just get to know them and just pick their brains and sit down with the writer at lunch and be like, so how would you do this and how would you do that? And it's just like free advice that you're getting paid to do. So that was amazing to work on that show. And I met a lot of people on there that I brought onto Primitive War, including a couple of the military advisors. So Captain Dale Dye, who did Saving Private Ryan, who co-wrote Platoon. He's a legend in the military advising world. I became sort of an acquaintance. I like to say a friend of his. I've worked with him a couple of times now, and the Pacific was like 11 months working with Captain Dye every day, and seeing his training, seeing his his smarts and how he did all that. So I sent him the script to Primitive War, and I was like, do you mind? You're a veteran yourself of Vietnam. Would you mind going through and just give me notes, just hack at it. I apologize for the dinosaurs, but let's get everything else. Let's get everything else right. I'd love to get everything else right to sort of make sure I'm doing it right by the veterans. So he went through and gave me heaps of advice and helped me tweak it and change it. And then I brought in a ex-Marine from the Pacific, Freddie Joe Farnsworth, who was out here every day, and he took him to a boot camp. And every time the cameras weren't rolling, he would take the guys out into the jungle and just keep training them and keep them up to speed. So by the time the end of the film came around, they were kind of dialed into what they needed to do, and it really had that camaraderie for the whole crew. Then the crew saw them doing that, and it was a very tight crew because it's an indie low budget thing. So it all became a real sort of militaristic in a way, team, which is really what a film crew should be like, because you kind of, you're sort of setting up this structure when you're making a film crew. You've got the director, and then he needs to lead the people, and everyone needs to sort of be in this like command section, and you've got the generals and your things. That's how I look at it anyway. And otherwise the whole thing just kind of falls apart. Yeah. So, getting that right with the military every day was awesome, getting the script notes on, and then having our smarts behind it of how to make sure the production design and value look good and correct. So all those three together was just the culmination of my career, really, of just bringing in everyone I've worked with and making it happen for my own film.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, for starters, thank you for answering that question so in depth. I tend to ask deep questions, so apologies in advance for that going forward. Okay. But no, you killed it. That was awesome, and I love hearing just how important the accuracy was for this film, because it makes everything else feel more tangible as a result, which I guess leads me to my next question of the dinosaurs. Something that I love about the animals that you guys have for this film compared to, say, Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, is that they are dinosaurs, but they don't look like the dinosaurs that those movies have introduced to us over the decades. They're more scientifically accurate. Special shout out to the Spinosaurus, which we will talk about for sure. But how was the process for making sure that those dinosaurs looked as close to what they should have back when they were alive?
Yeah, as far as we know is the caveat, right? Because dinosaurs, Jurassic at the time, and so it's so weird that everyone keeps comparing it to Jurassic, because I take it as a blessing and a curse. Like, it's never going to be Jurassic on our budget, but it's nice that people keep referring it, because I mean, like, it's crazy in its own. So I appreciate that. But even when Jurassic first came out, it was the most up to date dino film. You know what I mean? You had up until that point, the T-Rex was always kind of seen on its tail, walking on its tail, using it as a balance, and then now they sort of had it this way, the tail coming out, which looks really awesome. And the raptors at the time, no one really done raptors in that sort of way. So at the time, that movie was still like, wow, look at this, paleontologist Jack Horner worked on that show, and he spent all the time to make it as accurate as he could at that time. And imagine what I always liked that line in Men in Black, the first Men in Black movie. He's like, when he talks about what people know, and he's like, 500 years ago everybody knew the Earth was flat, blah blah. He goes on, he's like, and up until this point you knew you were alone on this planet. Imagine what we'll know tomorrow. So I always say, when it comes to the dinosaur thing throughout the office here, as we've been working on it, I'm like, look, there could be in 20 years time a breakthrough where it's like, oh, guess what, raptors look like this now. We don't know, we just went off what we knew at the time right now. So we did our best on what's been known. Also, I want to make sure we adapted them well from the book, because that's the IP we're taking it from. And then I had to inject some of my own thing in there, because why not? If I'm the one making the film and putting the risk up, I want to make sure I have my stamp on on it. And my idea was always, if you lined up dinosaurs of the same species from different films, you could pick out the primitive war one in a lineup from other movies. You know what I mean? I didn't want to look just like Jurassic or King Kong or whatever. So that was my idea going in. That was my sort of mantra throughout the whole film. And the raptors, especially with the feathers in the book and the comic,
Yeah.
everyone told me going in, they're like, don't try feathers. It's too hard. You know what I mean? Like, it's terrible. And I'm like, no, we're going to do it. And they were right, because it was freaking hard to do. If I had to put feathers on the Rex, like in the comic, in the book, the Rex has feathers. I think when the book came out, there was a conjecture that maybe they did have feathers, and since then the paleontology community have said no, we pretty much sure they didn't have feathers. So I was like, whew, if we have to feathers on the Rexes, I would still be working on this movie now, because at least we could sort of, as we went through the visual effects, we were like, I mean, let's focus on the guys that don't have feathers while we're working on the feathers in the background. So yeah, that was my mantra, like making sure the IP was still, looked after, up to date paleontology, and also my own little things I wanted to add in there.
For sure. That's cool. I mean, I gotta say too, like feathers, I can imagine they're super hard, even for a big budget movie, I could imagine. But one thing I did like about the effects with the film is that whenever water or nighttime was involved, the dinosaurs, they popped so well. Like they looked so good and tangible. Because, a movie of this scale, unfortunately, the limited budget does lend to certain things where you can obviously it's not real, because dinosaurs aren't real anymore. Maybe unfortunately, maybe not, depending on who you ask. However, those particular scenes, they really do shine in a way that is really awesome, and I like that a lot. One thing that as a dinosaur nerd, I've seen recently, I mean recent for me at least, that dinosaurs may not have roared like we thought, and instead may have communicated through various like clicks and chirps. Is that something that you would ever want to explore in a future primitive war movie, or do you think that might be like a larger departure than feathers at this point in like dinosaur media?
Yeah, there definitely was probably a month's discussion on that portion of the sound for this movie. Like, obviously look through, there's that YouTube clip that goes around of the difference of what dinosaurs might sound like big ducks or this kind of like weird things. And there was a point where I tried that into this movie, and it's one thing to hear it, and then you see it together. To me, it didn't pop as much, and it just felt a bit flat. It didn't feel like they had their own characters. It's kind of like that discussion everyone was having with the Disney live action Lion King movies. It's like, it's 100%, and now they're 100% lions, but have you lost some of that emotion in the faces that the cartoon does? You know what I mean? Like that type thing. So we played it, and it's kind of like it was a bit flat. So we still didn't go as far as having the Jurassic roars and that, but we definitely we sort of then decided to go a different way and use birds and use Komodo dragons and use alligators, at least real world references of what potentially reptiles and birds basically, and then emus. We use a lot of emus and cassowaries, and then we just sort of extrapolated the sounds a bit more and made them more chesty and bassy. So there was a huge discussion on sound, and I spent a lot of time in LA mixing it with my amazing sound mixer Chris Goods, and to get them to sound different enough, but also realistically in the line of like, I feel like it's okay.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm glad that was a discussion that was had, and I kind of like the confirmation that roars just work better on screen, because as someone who grew up on roaring dinosaurs, I kind of would want nothing less. I think,
and again, I would happily say I'm wrong if someone can show me a non-roaring dinosaur. I'd be like, all right, I'm wrong. Until that happens, I'll continue on.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think that when it comes to the chirping and the clicking elements that they've talked about, I think maybe in the sense of like being hunted by a pack of raptors or something and they're communicating that way, that could be scary in like a dark forest. But getting chased by a chirping T-Rex at 2:30 in the afternoon or like in the morning, it's a lot scary to get roared at. That's for sure.
I agree with that. And if I do get to do a sequel and there's a moment where we can have clicks in that, is something that I'll definitely be playing with.
That'd be fun. That would be super fun. And leaning into sound, one of the things that my ears thoroughly enjoyed watching the film was hearing the T-Rex's chomp. And it's something that I never thought about, and I guess I'd never seen before that. But hearing them like try and nab a bite, and then you just hear the teeth clonk, and it's such a unique, weird ASMR dinosaur nerd sound for me. Was that something that kind of was discussed, or did it just kind of happen, and you were like, "Oh, that's cool"?
Nope, it was 100% me because I sound like I'm very much like you with the dino note. It's something that I've always wanted to do, and I was always literally in the script. I wrote a line being like, it comes down and it sounds like a pop of 2x4s or whatever I put in the script to really make sure that people knew I wanted to do that. And it was a long process because I think it was the most sound that I kind of sat there in the sound room and they're like, "How about this?" I'm like, no. It took, and then like, you always know when it's like getting to the end because they're like, "How about we circle back to that?" So it was one of those ones we always circled back and like, "I got a new sound for you, Luke. Here we go." I heard, I'm like, no, and it wasn't until the very last I was in LA doing the sound mix, and then I sort of he was maybe pull the layers out, maybe try something else, and he's like, "How about us go through all the layers?" And he went through all the layers, and at one point I'm like, "That's it, that's the one." And he's like, "Finally." 6 months worth of this popping noise, and we found something that looks like. So it was very particular. I'm glad you like it. I mean, you might be the only person in the world that comments on it, but I spent a lot of time on that pop.
Well, I'm glad to have commented on it. I'm just picturing the poor Foley artist that's just like been at it for weeks. Like, all right, try the coconuts again. All right, no, the 2x4 one more time.
Yeah,
it's so cool though. Like, I really enjoy that stuff. There's always little sounds, little things with cameras that it can enhance a movie for me, and that was just one of the things that I saw that I truly enjoyed. That being said, one of the other things I enjoyed, as I had mentioned earlier, was the boat scene with the Spinosaurs. I think there was so much said in that scene through action in terms of like, you see the haphazard actions of the dinosaurs where they weren't the full focus and they're easily distracted. But it also like it got a good jump scare out of me, and I'm a huge horror movie fan, and I don't get jump scared unless it's like a loud sound type situation. But that Spinosaurus coming out of the water onto the boat, that one got me. I was literally like working, and I see over, like, oh my god, and I was like, that's so cool. And it's just I love that scene. And coming from someone who loved the Spinosaur scene in Rebirth and saw the Jaws influences in that, I genuinely really enjoyed this Spinosaur scene more so because it was scary.
Thank you. That's good because when I announced this movie and we only had, we shot this whole film in 25 days, which is like crazy.
That's impressive.
People know how long it takes to film a movie, especially like this. Because I worked on, speaking back to X-Men, I worked on X-Men Origins Wolverine.
No way.
I worked on the opening sequence with all the Logan through time, going through all different military, Civil War, and that. I was Hugh's
That's part of the movie.
I was Hugh's equipment guy. I did, and then we did Liev Schreiber, plus we did all the extras. It is the best part of the movie, and they filmed it very, very late in the day. I literally went from the Pacific. They rang us up and said, "When you finish on the Pacific, because we want you up here in Sydney to do this." So we kind of went from that to that, and took all the gear with us. But my point, well, I'm off track now, but my point of that was, yes, so X-Men, they were filming that for like 6-7 months. We filmed this in 25 days. So, but we only had 3 to 4 weeks pre, which was again insane to build all these sets and everything else. But we were like week 2 in the pre, we'd all geared up, we've got the money ready to go. And then they announced JW Rebirth. And I was like, oh no, like now we're going up against Jurassic Park. That's crazy. And then the trailer came out with the Spinosauruses, and I was like, oh no, like it kept hitting me over the head. But I think it's all worked out for the best. So I appreciate that that you liked the Spino scene, because I saw it in the trailers of Jurassic, and I'm like, well, we're too far now. We're just gonna have to keep going. So that's good.
Yeah, no, I honestly, like, whenever I have these shows and I'm talking to people, I try to be as transparent as I can. I have nothing to hide. And when it came to that scene, like, and I hate to always keep bringing up comparing the Jurassics to the Primitive Wars.
I don't mind.
That's good, because I saw Rebirth in theaters, and it was. I'm never gonna dislike a Jurassic movie. I'll tell people, even if it's not your favorite, if you're getting what you want, which for me is dinosaurs attacking people, you've got a solid movie. And like I said, I saw the Jaws influences in Rebirth, and I'm like, that's fun, that's cool. It was fun, but yours was scary, and it shows the importance of less is more, because versus a multi-million-dollar yacht versus a small boat where someone's going through drug withdrawals and another guy is like he lost his best friend and he's having a breakdown, and then these Spinosaurus attack. Like it was a well crafted scene in terms of like balancing all of those narratives, and then the dinosaurs show up.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's funny, we talk about this stuff now, like the T-Rex chomp and the Spinosaurus things. I always say to my team here, like, it's just a pity that filmmakers can't put up little tidbits on the cinema screen as people are watching it. Like, did you know?
Yeah.
We shot this in an afternoon, and it was really, really hard, and the light was leaving, and everything else. Like, because every time you talk about a scene, it just brings me back to like, oh man, that was tough. And then we shot it was tough, and then we did the visual effects was tough, and then we had to figure out the water sims. We had to do all this. So, it's been it's fun reminiscing, but it's just hard work.
Yeah, the hard work, I think it pays off, and it paid off in dividends with so many people. But you saying that does make me realize how fun it would be as a kid who loved to watch those types of pop-ups on DVDs when I was little, how fun it would be to watch a movie and have those little like fun factoids pop up in the middle of like a scene, and you just kind of get informed and you're back to watching it, popcorn. That would be cool. Now, another thing that Primitivore does that I've watched my fair share of dinosaur films as a whole, but what I really like about this one is how gory it is and how bloody and how animalistic, truly animalistic these dinosaurs are. It kind of is very much like a horror film in that way. Filming those particular scenes and the violence entailed, and I'm not sure if you guys had a lot of practical effects to bring it to life as well, but what was it like filming those super gory scenes? Because like I've seen one guy disemboweled and the other one getting his guts eaten from the Quetzalcoatlus. Like all of that was very fun and interesting to watch. And I'm just curious, like what the process was in creating those super gory scenes.
Yeah, well, a lot of them are lifted straight from the book. And again, I've always said to people that my mantra is if you're going to get the IP for something, you got to give it reverence and not just, I hate these sort of franchises that come in and feels like they throw it out the window just for the filmmakers to say, I've got the IP, but I want to do my version of it. I really don't. I don't like that as a fan of these franchises. So a lot of those are lifted straight from the book. And it's something that when I read like the disemboweling scene, when I read it, I was just like, this has got to go in because this is kind of like what this story is, a military war film in Vietnam. You can't then make it PG-13. That doesn't make any sense because then you're just literally up against Jurassic. Like we can do something different. Yeah. And that whole something different mantra was something I kept all the way along as well, even to the composing at the end when the guy's getting his guts ripped out in the end tunnel and all that kind of stuff. The first version of it, which was my fault. When I do an edit, I always put in some temp music from other movies to give the mood of kind of what I was going for. And it was a bit more heroic, a bit more like, big Hollywood brass and everything else. And then I was like, no, we've got an opportunity here to go like, we don't have a studio behind us, so I have no notes. I'm just going to do it myself. And we went a lot darker of the soundtrack in that. And I think we went a lot darker with some of the gore as well, because we don't have anyone telling us not to. And I think that's something that the audience has really respected as well. If you're coming in to see an R-rated dinosaur film, there's no point trying to skimp on that. And while I didn't want to go Terrifier 2 or The Substance, which is like ridiculously gonzo at the end and there's blood everywhere, I didn't want to do that because I think then people, even myself, kind of like you start glaze over and be like, yeah, this is silly. So I really had to like pick the moments to go, we're going to go big here. And some of these other ones can be a bit more like, oh, they killed and they grabbed and whatever else. So yeah, it was like those couple of moments I really wanted to make sure that we had planned out that we're going to do it properly. So we did have practical SFX. I used every trick in the book. So we had some puppets and some different ways of doing the dinosaurs, plus all the blood and gore on set as well. So it was those days definitely took a lot longer to be able to get it right, to sit there and go, okay, now this guy's going to get his guts ripped out and how are we going to do the bird and everything else. So yeah, it was a puzzle piece, but that's what a filmmaker should love to do. Otherwise, if you don't love it, you're kind of crazy because this business is very tough. And if you didn't love it and kept coming back and making more, what are you doing?
Very true. I think it kind of harkens back to when I was a kid. I was a messed up kid. I loved movies like Anaconda, Godzilla. If there's an animal eating a person, I was the kid watching. And
that Anaconda shot where it eats John Voight.
Yes,
I really tried to get a shot of like a Rex eating a Russian, like from the mouth point of view, but we just couldn't make it work. But I get what you're saying.
It was fun, and I think another thing of that is it kind of like even talking about this now, it's like this core memory of when I was a kid, this fleeting thought of, oh, a new dinosaur is going to be in a movie. I wonder how that's going to eat someone. And now, thanks to this movie, I know what a Quetzalcoatlus looks like when it's eating someone, and it's just as horrifying as I had anticipated. Loved it. Another comparison in talking about this, especially the gore and saying you didn't want to go full Terrifier and you wanted the movie to be what it is. I think it's very, and for the sake of, again, comparisons happen a lot, but it's always for me, it's a compliment. Reminded me so much of Predator. The idea of tough guys who have done tough stuff. They do dark things to get where they need to get. And at the end of it all, they're still just as much prey as they are predator. And then the dinosaurs being those predators, that's something that you don't see in movies that much anymore, that I think Primordial excelled very much in doing. It reminded us that, like, no matter how tough we are, nature is the ultimate, is undefeated. And that was really fun to see kind of unfold, see these guys scared. That was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I love the first Predator. I love all the Predators, but definitely the first one in the jungle is a good comparison to this movie, and definitely was on my pitch deck when I was pitching this movie out. You know what I mean? I was like, imagine, Platoon meets The Lost World meets Predator. Like, that's kind of like the pitch awesome. That I was doing. And obviously the jungle setting. I love John McTiernan as a director. So it's something that I always fall back on watching that film. And yeah, we don't see much like that anymore. And while I didn't want to go as macho as that movie is, with obviously the Dylan, you son of a bitch, the hand, I want to make these characters a bit more real. So like you said, they get scared for these things, which you would in real life, even though they've got guns. So yeah, it was that really sort of that finding that balance of like, these guys have guns, so it doesn't have to be like oh my god, we're running away from dinosaurs like in other franchises, but also they can stand and fight. But let's see what happens, if they're getting outnumbered. Let's see what happens if they're being stalked. Like, yeah, that was a lot of fun to play with, and keeping that through line from the book to make sure book fans were happy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how these characters are brought to life as well, because you get every type of character. You get, and one that stuck out to me was the one who was already dealing with mental health problems, and then when his friend died and he was on his own, his sacrifice. I'll talk a little spoilers, but nothing too much. But his sacrifice was very, it was played in a way where it was heroic and sacrificial, but came out of left field in a good way. And I thought that was very interesting, because it showed to me as a viewer just how no one is really safe with the plot. And I know that that's something that's from the book as well, but it's conveyed also in the movie. And I thought that was cool that you're able to tell like dramatic stories, because soldiers in Vietnam, they went through a lot, as we all know, and they took a lot of it home and they kept a lot of it on the battlefield. And I think it was very fun to kind of explore those levels while also dodging a Utah Raptor or a T-Rex.
Yeah, that was the whole point of it. So
yeah,
that's great. Sure. You picked up on that.
It was fun. Now, one other thing I want to touch on, I know we're coming close to the end here, but the movie in the third act, we kind of shift genres again into like harder sci-fi. And so it's like a war movie, it's a dinosaur movie, and then it gets into like a really interesting sci-fi twist. When you're approaching that as a filmmaker, did you approach each of those elements from that perspective? Like where you're like, all right, let me shift gears here and we're going to go a little more sci-fi and kind of adjust for that? Or did you look at it as one big concept and kind of tackle it that way?
Yeah, definitely the one big concept is kind of what I looked at. And in the book, there was a lot more, and even in probably the early script and what we shot, there was probably more. It's the hard sci-fi thing is I tried to lessen the impact of that and keep the characters, keep the dinosaurs there. I didn't want to suddenly have that sort of feels like it stops more than it does. And then go, let's explain this now. Let's explain all this sci-fi stuff. So I wanted to try to just kind of get through that as quick as I could and try to pick moments to go, if you don't pick up what I'm putting down, you might get on the second watch. And, you know what I mean? Like I didn't want to get bogged down in the specifics, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it was an interesting choice to put that down the list to be like, it's these two things first. It's the war, dinosaur. Let's keep that going. And if we have to, we'll dive into this, but let's keep it, not as a main thing.
Got you. Like keeping the strong points as strong as it can be, while also, like you said, acknowledging the source in a way that is palatable for the modern audience.
Yeah, I mean, everyone needed to know how these dinosaurs ended up in Vietnam. That's obviously a big question going in. So I had to address it, and we did obviously address it. And there was lots more exposition scenes that I dropped out, trimmed down, and cut up to make sure it doesn't just get bogged in specifics.
Absolutely. Well, that's cool. And I did like how it all balanced out at the end too, because it never lost its identity, even with that extra added thing in the third act. That said, you said you filmed a lot of hard scenes. You talked about a lot of elements from the film. What was one of your most favorite either days or scenes or moments from Primitive War, from conception to the release, that sticks out to you even now?
A couple. I really liked the time we had on the boat. I think we had a really good, all the cast had a good time on that. And sometimes on the hard days and shoots, sometimes you walk away going, I got it, but geez, that was really tough. And while every day was tough, that was just a really fun experience, a good memory, all the cast coming together on the boat. And we were just literally just heading back to the docks at the Unibase, and the sun was coming in the right direction. And I just grabbed the cameras and everyone just get in the character, was going to film you guys going back, and I ended up making a whole sequence with the song out of that, just that little bit going back. Wasn't in the script, it was just happened on the day with nice lighting, and the guys were in it so much they could just be themselves and be part of, like the woman hands the smoke to the baker, and all that was just them just living the moment. And we were just filming on the way back. So that was we got back, and I remember we were all very happy, slapping each other on the back for that day. So it was a really fun day. And the other one that I'm really happy with is the third act, or the fourth act, climax of the film, where there's, like, without spoilers, but there's a very large group of dinosaurs fighting the guys around a helicopter in the rain. And that conceptually was something I wanted to do right from the beginning, and it was something I had to fight for because of our schedule and the timing. The first time we tried to do it was kind of a disaster, and then I'm like, we're gonna have to look at the schedule and pull some things out and condense some things. So I need to go back, and I need this ending, I need it the way I want to shoot it. And we sort of tackled it like 2 or 3 times throughout it, and then really went into pre-visualization on that sequence really early on, and the slow-mos and very Zack Snyder sort of influence there of, like, just telling stories with images is what kind of I really like as well with that dialogue. So to have slow-mo and images and these crazy shots, that's I'm very proud of that, and something that I thought really hard to do.
That's awesome. Those are, and both elements, both stories. I love the improvisation of knowing when to pick up a camera for that boat sequence, because those are the things that end up becoming the most memorable. And then also, like you said, images in action, and seeing this, like, it's something that sticks out to my head. Even if I like 5 years from now, and my memory is just shot and I don't remember anything, I'll remember that shot for sure, because it was cool, and it had all the elements of shooting dinosaurs in the rain, gunfire, us against them, nature and humanity. It's cool. So those are great answers. Thank you for that. Now, Primitive War is a movie that it's R-rated, it's bloody, it's a war movie, and it's a dinosaur movie. It has all the elements for a mature audience, but it also has a lot of elements for kids that maybe want to sneak in a movie they shouldn't watch and then create some memory. And all of that is done without a big studio. So I guess my question to you would be, what does it feel like stepping back and looking at things, and you kind of capitalized and almost helped to be one of the forerunners in a movement that I've noticed, where ambitious films that aren't from big studios, that do things that aren't safe, end up becoming praised for those exact same reasons and remembered as such. How did it feel to be in a group of movies that are like that? I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know there's a lot of movies that capture those elements lately that have really shown, and kind of, I would say, made larger studios kind of quake in their boots, because you guys can do it and you don't necessarily need them. And how does it feel to kind of be a part of that?
I mean, like I said at the beginning, like humble, it's like a bit of a pinch me moment, and just to see, just all the way along from the first time we dropped the teaser trailer, where it just went viral, like within 24 hours, had millions of views, to going to Comic-Con, worrying, am I going to be able to fill Ballroom 20 with 4,000 people, and walking out there and seeing about 4,000 people, watching this film with one trailer without being a sequel, reboot, rehash, or anything else as a new IP, to having the film come out and then sort of landing well with the audience, and some critics. But definitely the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, there's been stories about it where it's like, the tomato meter, the popcorn meter, compared to the Jurassic franchises. And it's like Jurassic Park, Primitive War, and then all the other Jurassics, it's that's crazy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I didn't expect that. We had obviously, like you said before, comparisons with Jurassic Park. Even in our own studio here, we have sat down throughout the entire editing process and like, I wonder where this is going to fit with the Jurassic franchise. It'll probably be like somewhere in the middle. And that's what I was hoping for. It was like better than these ones, but maybe not as good as these ones. And we kind of resigned ourselves to that fact.
Yeah.
And to come out and see people just be like, just a constant, like, my phone, I can just literally all through the day, it's just always constant messages on Twitter. People be like, I saw this movie, I loved it. Best movie of my year. I love this dinosaur movie. Like, just seeing that, obviously, that as a filmmaker, it's what you want, right? You want people to like what you put down, and for it to land as well as it has with the dino community and just fans. Awesome. Like, really, I really appreciate the support.
That's great. And that's a great answer too. I know as a dino fan, those are the types of things that we hope to see as much as we love Jurassic Park. Different things are great things. You know that as well as a filmmaker and a dinosaur fan. Do you think that there's a future for Primitive War beyond this? Like, because that ending of the film definitely opens a lot of doors that I didn't expect because I hadn't read the books.
Well, it's not in the books. It's something that I did. In the books,
Really?
it's very much they leave. It's still a secret. I think in the sequels, they they've kind of built like I think at the end in the epilogue of the first book, there's like they've built walls around the valley to keep the dinosaurs in the walls, which to me became a bit more like Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
So I wanted to really go again. Really? I always loved the ending of Iron Man. How he stands up and he's like, "I am Iron Man," and you're kind of like, "Well, this is different. We're not going the secret route. We're going this," which is what the MCU was all built upon that. So at the end, I was like, you know what, we should just do it where everyone sees the dinosaurs. And then I even added a little extra at the end, which was the after credit sequences where I put the 60s footage and I've clumped in dinosaurs in the 60s and I've got the president talking about it and all that kind of stuff. And that only happened. I came up with that idea like 4 weeks before delivery. So only 4 weeks ago, before the film was released, they came up with that, and we quickly rushed through those shots. And I was like, we should expand the world. You know what I mean? You've got these dinosaurs, let's expand the world. And again, telling stories just through a shot.
Yeah.
The audience, every session I've been to, the audience have stayed to watch those little vignettes of like a dinosaur being taken away by a Chinook, or dinosaurs with a flamethrower, and dinosaurs doing these things. And I'm like, you're just telling a story through visuals. It's not even dialogue. You know what I mean? But people walked out and they're like, wow, dinosaurs are now in the world. We get it. And I'm like, great. Didn't need to be spoon fed. So even just that world building at the end, yes, of course. There's 4 books of this series. I would love to do another one. I really think that as good as this movie has landed, and I think our team has learned so much on this movie, and even critics obviously have put their 2 cents in, yourself as well included. I feel like there's definitely a level to build on. It's not like it's come out like the first Jurassic Park's like the best, right? Nothing ever tops it. Nothing's ever going to top it. Yeah, it's only going down from there. I feel like that we could go up. I feel like that we could have another shot and go, let's build upon this, and then become like. I always said to people, if this is my A New Hope. If this talking Star Wars, it's like the beginning. It's rough around the edges a little bit. It takes a little bit to get into it, like A New Hope. And by the end, there's the Death Star attack, and by the end of my one, there's this big rain thing. So it's all very much it's where my mind goes. Yeah. And I'd love to do The Empire Strikes Back. I'd love to do. I'd love to have another go and do something different. And sort of akin it to Empire.
That would be awesome. I think that would be sick. I mean, I can agree. Your film sticks to the landing. It gets everything that needs to get done, and it gets it done in a way that's clear and concise to the audience. And I, for one, with those vignettes, I was like, Primitive War. That's why it's called Primitive War. I didn't know it wasn't in the book, but I feel like you've again, bringing back the word validated, you validated that title tenfold, because now I'm sitting here as a viewer and I'm like, well, let's go to war. Let's fight these dinosaurs. So, that's very exciting, and I do hope that we can see more, because like you said, I think it could only go up. You're right. It's an ambitious movie. You nailed it, and now there's a chance for more and more ambition and more soap.
And I feel like the audience is behind me. I mean, if anyone's watching this video and they can comment, leave comments and whatever, because I always look at everything. But I feel like the audience it's landed enough with the audience that they kind of want more. So for me to make that happen, it would just have to be how well the sales do. And I know internally here, lots of people are keen on doing it. So, I've got ideas.
Rock and roll.
Formulated.
I love to hear it, and I hope that there's an opportunity for us to chat again about it, because this has been such a fun chat. you being who you are, you're an inspiration in the independent film community because now you're showing not only can you just make a movie, but you can make a big movie and have it work. And I think that's something that so many independent filmmakers need to hear and need to see because it's hard. It's easy to get discouraged. So before I do my closing, is there anything you want to tell those filmmakers, those young filmmakers out there that have just as big an ambition as you?
Like I said before, just get on film sets, you know, watch all old films, watch new films, really get it into your DNA. If you know you can do it, like I knew I could do it, you got to back yourself, and you really have to have it all in your DNA. You really have to have it where you just one track mind to get it done, and just no distractions, and it's going to be tough. There's no secret button. You know what I mean? Like the secret is just hard work. You know, and if you learn everyone's roles, don't let, you know, my biggest thing that I tell people as well is don't let people fool you, or that's really easily behind the curtain in this industry where they're like, I'll do this for you, but you have to, this is how much it costs, or this is how much it is. I've done 6 films and I've looked behind the curtain on each and every one. And that's why this movie, I've taken on so much roles myself, because I'm like, if you can do that, and no offense, but I think I could do it better. You know what I mean? Like, so, and yeah, and I think it's been proven. So, you know, nothing's impossible.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great way to end it right there. Well, Luke, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to chat with me about this movie, about fandom, and all of this fun stuff as well. You truly are an inspiration for independent filmmakers, sci-fi, creature features, all of that. So, you know, thank you for coming on. Everyone, I hope you liked listening to this or watching this, however you're checking this out. And I hope everyone has a great day. And yeah, stay tuned. We've always got more coming.